The recent report that high percentage of Nigerian firstborn children belong to other men other than the person they call father has been described as worrisome. This made DNA tests to become a frequently debated topic. Senior correspondent Ivy Kanu put together this report on DNA testing and its acceptance in Nigeria.
The above revelation kick-started the conversation on DNA testing, with some describing the claim as exaggeration. However, the social media has been agog with arguments for and against DNA testing, especially paternity. The statement has also given rise to conversations on how respected the marriage institution is.
Usually, I don't think you should actually want to do it, but the moment you begin to feel your spouse is sleeping around and you want to secure the future of your children, you want to protect them, it's important you know if they are truly your child.
Wow, that one is it's very broad because I think that has to do with trust. That has to do with trust because I don't see any reason why you'll be in a marital relationship with somebody and you are still trying to run a DNA test.
From a legal perspective, I feel DNA test is very, very important because it solves a lot of issues without having to argue, go back and forth, blame it on another person or a heritage.
The number one reason why people might be scared of having a DNA test will be probably because of their distrust in the health, in the integrity of the health sector.
As for you to see a child rising up to kill the mother or the father, that means the parents are not really the true parents, and it is only the woman that knows the father of the child.
A lot of people feel they're not comfortable with their spouse. It's painful. So I always suggest if they have the money or if they can finance it, they should do it. Especially the man, because he is doing the spending.
DNA testing is a basic requirement for families before obtaining traveling documents for their children. Johnson, not his real name, and has been living in the United States for 15 years, was a victim.
I was doing relatively well in Nigeria but needed to secure a future for my children, and I assumed that relocating would do that for me. So I left my wife and 4 lovely children, or so I thought, in Nigeria. I made sure they never lacked anything. So this time came in 2014 when we decided, that is my wife and I, to have them come join me in the United States. I came into Nigeria and the process began. At some point, paternity test was needed, and lo and behold, the unimaginable happened. The result came out, and my world was shattered. It turned out only one of the 4 kids was my child.
Chief Medical Director, DNA Center, was away on vacation. He, however, obliged us with some vital information over the phone. According to the forensic geneticist, the center has carried out over 1,000 tests since it was commissioned, with paternity inquiries making up to 65%. In our quest to get more answers, we also made a stop at Lagos State DNA and Forensic Center to get some of those answers like paternity test, how it's done, and also, the influx of people into the center.
This is the camera, and so of course every item of evidence that we receive, we have to take photos of them. Okay. And these are buccal swabs, like this.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So when we receive sample from crime scene, from police officer or whoever is submitting, so we take the sample into this room to examine. If there is presence of biological material, they are going to fluoresce. So this is a duvet recovered from a crime scene. So what I'm going to be doing now is I will be shining light on it. Why am I doing that? When you're looking at it, you can't see stains. But with the help of these alternate light sources, you're going to see the miracle sun. So that's it. Do you want to use this too? You need a dark environment for the UV lights to be able to work. Okay. So it has to be dark. So I have to turn off the lights.
Okay.
Again. See? Okay. Now this might be suspected from the color that it's semen.
Yes.
So we have a test that will do to confirm it's semen.
Okay.
So when you're done with the test, then you can proceed to DNA analysis and you do your extraction to have your profile.
Instead of the hands-on method that we do in the lab that takes about 2 days, this does all the extraction, the quantification, amplification, and the analysis of the DNA that you extracted in like 84 minutes. After extraction, you quantify the DNA, and that's just basically knowing the amount or quantity of DNA that you have in that sample that you extracted. And so this is the quantitation machine. This is what does that concentration, or trying to know the quantity of DNA that you have. Okay. After that one, you come here. This is a thermal cycler. So think of this as a Xerox machine. It helps us to manage this database, and it's called the Small Pond software. Okay. And it's divided into several compartments. Okay. Anyway, depending on the case you're dealing with. So as you can see this is forensic evidence. So this is evidence that we see in the crime scene.
We've gotten to this point where Adeshola feels we can be taken into this particular room.
So this is where the hands-on technique takes place. Ooh, yes. Okay. So this is where we do all the extraction and the quantification and the amplification as well. Basically, it acts as a barrier between the evidence you're dealing with and then the analysts. To prevent contamination, basically. Yes, that's what the hood is all about. When we're done with all of our evidence, or probably when we're coming from the crime scene, this is where we store them, okay, before we start analysis of the whole evidence in the laboratories.
Sort of like I walk in here and I need to do a test to determine probably the father of my kids. Okay. What's the process?
They just need to provide their government-issued identification. So it can be national ID card, it can be passports, it can be driver's license. And so, of course, they have to make payments as well.
For DNA paternity, we need the father, the mother, and the child. And then it's 90,000 naira. But for an additional child or additional person, it's 30,000 naira. For paternity, the father, the mother, we need the mother because we need the mother's consent if the child is a minor. But if the child is up to 18, we can do the father and the child. But for maternity, we don't need the father, so it's just the mother and the child. Avuncular, if you're using the man's brother to determine if he's related to the children, that's avuncular. Then you can also do safe shape, that's to determine if two siblings, if they are related.
Why is avuncular expensive?
We're trying to determine the relationship between someone else that is not the father, that is not a direct relative to the child, like the father or mother. So the procedure is quite voluminous as compared to paternity.
In a religious society such as ours, the opinion of religious leaders are highly respected, so they need to get their reaction to this trend.
I don't know where they got that statistics from. It's a devilish thing. It's a ploy to bring mistrust in homes, you know. You begin to look at your kids. Are you sure that my kids are, because they're not doing like this or like that? I don't believe in. I don't know, but I will find it difficult to advise someone to throw the kids out because DNA says they're not his kids. You know? Solve the problem with your woman and then move on. I understand that it's not easy to be fooled. It's not good to be fooled, but these are human beings. You know, these are kids you've been with, you've called your own for 10 years, maybe 15 years, 2 years, and you feel them, you know. And then something happens, and then you find out that they're not yours. I think they're yours. Yeah, that's my own counsel. I won't tell you kick them out. You know, they should stop all this DNA. It doesn't make sense. It's not. You know, it's not it.
In Islam, one of the major sins about which the Prophet said that whoever does it, the only thing that will be preventing that person from hellfire will be death, is to confuse paternity. And it is unfair. How can you, allow a man to bring up, with hope, with all resources, with high expectation, somebody that that is not a child of that man? It's very criminal and it's very sinful.
Since this conversation is not ending anytime soon, parents are expected to consider the emotional and psychological impact on their children. It is also the view of some people that one must not father a child to love a child. Ivy Kanu, TVC News, Lagos.